session.
We are now going to reconvene our regular session of City Council and
9:22.
at 9:22 p.m. And we will now move on to ordinances, and we'll begin with ordinance 2015-3. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2015-3, an ordinance authorizing the mayor of the city of Mayfield Heights to enter into a collective bargaining contract with the Union of State, County, and Municipal Workers of Ohio Service Department Bargaining Unit and declaring an emergency. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Monaco, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mr. Mano. All right, this is an ordinance that authorizes the mayor to enter into the collective bargaining contract with the union representing the city. Mayor, do you want to add anything at this time? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Ordinance 2015-3 has been adopted. We'll move on to ordinance 2015-4. Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2015-4, an ordinance setting the fee for the rental of the Mayfield Heights Park Pavilions. First reading.
So we need a motion to place this ordinance on first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. Roll call on the motion to approve. No,
Place it on first
to
reading.
place on first reading, I apologize.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. This motion has been this ordinance has been placed on first reading. Now we'll move to ordinance 2015-5.
Thank you. Ordinance number 2015-5, an ordinance setting the fees for the Mayfield Heights Summer Day Camp Program. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Mano, seconded by Mr. Mercurio. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Monaco, seconded by Mr. Mano. Again, this ordinance pertains to an increase in fees for our summer day camp. Right, our Recreation Director, Sean Ward, is in the audience. Are there any questions for Mr. Ward? Seeing none, is there roll call?
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Ordinance 2015-5 has been adopted. Ordinance 2015-6, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. 2015-6, an ordinance setting the fees for the Mayfield Heights Teen Adventure Camp Program. First reading.
Is there a motion to suspend the rules? Moved by Mr. Monaco, seconded by Mr. Mano. Roll call on the motion to suspend.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mrs. Teresi?
Yes. Is there a motion to approve? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mr. Monaco. Again, this is an ordinance setting the fees for teen adventure camp. Mr. Ward is in the audience. Any questions for Mr. Ward? Roll call on the motion to approve.
Mrs. Sabetta?
Yes.
Mr. Mano?
Yes.
Mr. Mercurio?
Yes.
Mr. Monaco?
Yes.
Mr. Sharia?
Yes.
Mr. DeJohn?
Yes.
Mrs. Tressy?
Yes, ordinance 2015-6 has been adopted. We will move on to ordinances, and we have motions, and we have one motion on the agenda, Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. Motion to approve the request of the Parks and Recreation Committee to allow minors under 21 years old to be volunteers at the Taste of Italy event sponsored by the city and held at the Ross C. DeJohn Community Center on February 14, 2015.
Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Monaco, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. We do this every year when we have this Taste of Italy dinner. Are there any questions for Mr. Ward? Mr. Monaco?
Thank you. I have a question for the law director. Is there a way to do this so that we don't have to renew this every year?
Probably, it's questionable whether or not you need to, but it's much better if you do it every year and do it individually for each event even. So I don't see anything wrong with it.
I was just thinking that if we take the year out and we just do it, Taste of Italy at the Rest of John Community Center, and we leave the date out, and we could probably use the same language every year rather than having to pass it, but
Except then you're binding future councils, and circumstances may change where a council in the future may not want to amend those rules, so it doesn't hurt to do it every year.
okay, thank you.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This motion has been carried. We will now move on to new business or comments from council. Comments? New business, Mr. DeJohn.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Ward, can you step up? I just had some questions about the pavilion fee. This is brand new, is that correct?
It is, yes.
Brand new fee, so we've never had a fee before.
Correct.
And how did you come up with the fee?
Well, looking at surrounding communities, I kind of looked at what they were doing. I really didn't want to get into giving money back, writing checks back, and a security deposit type.
So you don't want any security deposit?
Yeah, just we have 3 pavilions. They're rented every weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We'd be getting into the business of writing a lot of checks to return security deposits. So I thought, let's go with a fee. Quite frankly, I wanted to get something up off the ground. We haven't charged ever, and I didn't want to put it out there too far and have something that you guys wouldn't feel comfortable with. So that's why I came in at $35. Highland Heights, they do $100 and you get 50 back as long as you're, keep the place clean. But again, that's a deposit coming back. So
In the $35 fee will go towards what?
just helping to offset the cost of keeping the place clean. If there's a party Friday night, we gotta be back Saturday morning, gotta be back Sunday morning to make sure, some people trash the place, or some people, they're fine, but the garbage cans are full. And so you have a party of 75, 100 people and the garbage cans are full, it's not gonna fly. So it's just covering those costs.
And do you realize that, if you were to rent a pavilion in the metro parks, it's about $100?
Yes, yeah. I guess coming from zero, I didn't wanna put too big of a sticker shock on council and residents.
And we do not rent to non-residents, correct?
You have to be a resident of the city.
That's
Correct.
And how do you verify that?
They have to come in and show us their ID. But as anything goes, that doesn't mean that, a resident can't rent it for an outside party.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Ward?
I have one question.
Mr. Mano has some.
What about all the vandalism that takes place in those pavilions? You know, I requested that be on first reading because I think these fees are too low. I've talked to members of the service department and they've told me about the messes that they end up cleaning up over there. $35 is not enough money. I propose that you raise the fee to $50 with a $100 security deposit and hold people responsible for the vandalism that occurs in those things. I mean, being part of other groups, we've rented the pavilions before, we've used them before. And I don't remember one time that we didn't encounter broken glass and all kinds of things. I mean, somebody's gotta be responsible for that because the city has to pay to continually fix them up, clean them up for the next person coming in. And I think that responsibility should go to the people that wanna use it. It shouldn't go to the city. The taxpayers are on the hook for everything. So I really believe that there should be more discussion on this thing, and we've gotta jack up the fees and the charges to make people more responsible. I mean, $35 is nothing, but you put $100 on them, they pay a little more attention to what they're doing there.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. I guess, not to stray off, but a lot of what we see in there is kids hanging out. That's a lot of the damage.
Well, we've got auxiliary police, and we've got police, and we need to police those parks better, and we need to keep those kids the hell out of there. Those things should be cleaned up and fixed up properly and get a clean bill of health, and from that point on, anybody who does any damage over there should be responsible for it. Because it's ridiculous. The city every year, they have to redo all the benches, they have to, they break lights, they tip over the porta potties. I mean, you gotta put a stop to that. There's no excuse for it. We've got plenty of police power between auxiliaries and the regulars that shouldn't happen. They should be going, that park should be cruised every hour. Every hour, somebody should cruise through that park. And there should be, at 10 o'clock at night or whatever the curfew time is, anybody caught in there, bring their butts in here and call their parents to come and get them. But you gotta do something to get a handle on this because the damage is just astounding. So I really think that we've gotta do something more than what we're doing over there.
Mr. Monaco, I see your lips moving.
I was just gonna ask, do we have cameras at the park?
They don't work.
Well,
We do.
I don't think they ever did work.
Mayor?
We do have cameras.
can we
But
make
do
them
they
to
work?
Is that a question you want answered for, anybody who's gonna walk through the park to hear?
Mr. DeJohn?
I don't have any more questions for Mr. Ward, but I do have another announcement. Does anybody else?
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. We'll discuss this further at a later date.
I did have a discussion with Service Director Joe Finaro, and we do have a safety issue in the city where snowplowers are pushing snow on sidewalks and makes the sidewalks impassable. And I just think we have to try to figure something out. It's happening not only on the commercial side, but also on the residential side. And just, we need to figure this problem out, especially for next year.
A lot of places on the commercial properties, like the shopping centers and stuff, if the snow is piled past a certain height, they have to truck it out of there. They have to load it and truck it out.
Correct, and that's what's happening right now is the burden's falling on the service department. They're clearing the sidewalks, especially where your commercial properties are, and the burden is, like I said, is falling on them, so. We
See,
just
Bobby, the
need
problem-
to put our minds together and try to figure out a solution to this problem.
Problem you have is you don't have tree lawns big enough, especially on the
Just said
older
they
sections
totally
of the
ignored
city. You don't have tree lawns wide enough to put snow on. The only way they can keep it off the sidewalk is to push it up onto the main lawn. A lot of them won't do that because if they tear the lawn up, then they gotta repair it. I plowed snow for 14 years, and I can tell you, that's the only way you can keep the sidewalk clean. Push it up onto the main lawn and push it far enough back so that if you get subsequent storms, you got the room to put the snow. I clean my sidewalk, I clean my neighbor's sidewalk. The guy on the other side, there's a mound of snow 6 feet high. I can't clean that.
Any other comments from council? Okay, seeing no new business, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mr. Mercurio, seconded by Mrs. Sabetta. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are now adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Good night.